Hi. What I want to do in this video is make it crystal clear where I lie on the issues. I mean, I always try to do that. I always try to make it clear what my views are. But the internet being what it is, it doesn't stop people ignoring things I've said, um, gaslighting me on some of my positions and so on. I accept that that comes with the terrain. I'm not going to whine about it too much because it's the nature of the internet. I'm certainly not going to lose sleep over people who will distort things that I've said. But I'm making this video because I think it's important. I think it's important to send out the message. People can take it or leave it. They can critique my position. They can support my position. And, I will say for those who support me, I apologize if I've kind of underlooked that. Um, so, yeah, I appreciate that. Thank you. It's good to see there's other people out there who recognize that we need to be honest about the whole picture here. Um, and Yeah, so without further ado, I'm going to get into this. The far right is a problem in this country. I'm going to put that out there and say that. It's absolutely a problem in this country. And one of the reasons I was so angry with GB News is their blatant attempts to downplay that. Now, I've heard a lot of people talk about Muslims in the context of the riots. There have been some Muslims arrested, actually. There was two guys in Leeds who apparently one of the right-wing rioters shouted things about the Prophet to him and he punched the guy. And actually there was a group of them laying into two white men. Now they've been arrested and they're going to go to prison for that, for a fray. Good. Um, I have long argued there has to be consistency. There has to be consistency. Now, I might make another video about some of the background issues involved in this. I don't want this channel to just be dominated by one subject, which is why I made a video on the Crown and Princess Diana. I'll be covering other things as well. But this probably is the main talking point in Britain today. So, yeah, it's valid to discuss these things. But one thing I've noticed that the right have been doing is they've really tried to downplay the influence of the far right. And it's delusional because the idea is, and I'm not going to name the person, but on that video I made about GP News, predictably, someone was talking about how it was just working class people fed up, um, and I pushed back hard on that because, for a start, I think it actually smears the working class by associating them with rioting criminals, a lot of whom are racist. I think that's a smear on the working class. Some of the people, quite a number of the people actually involved in the peace walk in my city were from working class backgrounds. Um, so this idea that it's a war on the working class is complete tosh. Um, Look at the places that have been vandalized. There was a woman who had a car burned in Sunderland. I'm sure she wasn't a millionaire. I'm sure she wasn't some elitist, just an ordinary person who had a car burned when she went into the city centre for shopping. So spare me this crap about working class people being agitated. It's really, I think it actually smears the working class to say that. Um, I think it's a very weak argument. It may well be that a lot of the rioters are from working class backgrounds, but there's many, many other people out there from working class backgrounds who reject them. So that's something I take issue with. Um, but I'm going to cite a few examples of the far right influence that very much exists. Now, people have said, oh, the EDL disbanded in 2015. Are they so naive to think that all those people that were in the EDL at that time just vanished or they just moderated their views overnight? This is how extremist groups work. It's the same with Islamist groups. They get proscribed or banned and the name changes. That's all that happens. So people saying, oh, the EDL's gone now, that's meaningless. It may be formally gone in name, but absolutely, Tommy Robinson still exists. EDL supporters are still very much out there. Maybe not in terms of supporting the EDL as a defunct organisation, but they'll just latch on to any other far right group. So that's just naive. It negates to see how these sort of extremist groups operate. It's exactly the same with Islamist groups. You know, the likes of Hizb ut-Tahrir and al-Mujahideen, I'm sure they've been prescribed, but they'll just merge into other groups. Now, I'm not saying the government shouldn't prescribe them, but that's how extremists operate. In fact, we could point to eco-zealots, because they do the same thing as well. You know, look what happened. Extinction Rebellion kind of morphed into Insulate Britain. That kind of morphed into Just Stop Oil. And it's the same hardcore people involved. And before people say, oh, I'm comparing Nazis to environmentalists, no, I'm not. I'm just saying that they are examples of extremists. There's different precise contexts and approaches. I do think they're all extremists, though. I do think they're all a bad influence in society, so I make no apology for saying that. The precise ideology and methods are different. You know, with far right faggots throwing rocks at the police or terrorising minorities, with an eco zealot, it's sabotaging motorways. So it's not the same approach, but it's still extremism. And I don't care, by the way, if eco zealots are doctors or retired teachers or supposedly respectable people. Incidentally, the whole class thing, most eco zealots tend to be middle class. I've been absolutely forceful in condemning them. So no one can accuse me of playing class war with this stuff. I condemn extremists. It's that simple. This video I'm focusing on the far right because it's there's been a lot of downplaying of that. Let me just read out a piece from the Times. This is from yesterday's Times, August the 12th. I'm not going to read out the whole thing, I'll just read out the first few paragraphs. The reports by Emma Yeomans. A Finnish neo-Nazi shared instructions to commit arson and urged people to file false reports in order to waste police resources during the riots last week. The man in his early 20s whom the Times is not naming, I'm not sure why they're not naming him, there's probably some legal issue around that, can be revealed as an instigator of the far-right action last week. He helped run a group chat on the app Telegram where tens of thousands of people shared ideas for riot locations. Tens of thousands. You know, I'm wrong about that. I said it's probably a hardcore of a few hundred people. I'm wrong about that. It appears there's a lot more involved. Tens of thousands of people shared ideas for riot locations and hateful content about immigrants and Jewish people. Interesting, and this is about Jewish people. Social media sites have come under increased scrutiny since the stabbings in Southport. Misinformation about the suspects spread quickly, as well as locations for possible arrests and incitement to riot. The neo-Nazi, who is understood to live in southern Finland, began posting extreme right-wing content online when a teenager. According to police records unearthed by YLE, the Finnish public broadcaster, he was previously investigated by Finnish police for making an illegal threat. He became an administrator for the Southport Wake Up group on Telegram, which became connected to the riots. And of course, Southport was one of the first towns to break into riots. This is just one example. This is today's eye. Musk's ex using far-right hate to sell adverts. You know, Elon Musk can do no wrong. Tech billionaire faces backlash after ads for Telegraph, Saudi Arabia travel and finance firms appeared alongside far-right viral messaging. Social media giants' revenue is being boosted by running adverts alongside tweets from British fascists, including Paul Golding of Britain First, who was jailed for a series of hate crimes against Muslims before Musk lifted the ban. Major companies shocked to learn their promotions are being run next to far-right content, and several pause their advertising effects. Messages include racist content and misinformation about UK riots. Musk under scrutiny for hosting hate speech in sight as he escalates clash with Prime Minister and sues Unilever and Mars over boycott. This just shows that X is a cesspit for this stuff. And you know, Musk, I've said that his attitude is anything goes. I believe that is his attitude. It doesn't matter if he says, oh, within the law, because he pushes the boundaries so far that he doesn't take any responsibility whatsoever. Now, if you have blatantly racist messaging, far right ideology coming through on one of the world's biggest platforms, clearly, clearly that is going to have an influence. You'd have to be pretty foolish to think that it wouldn't. That's why saying that the far right is minimal in this is delusional. It's like saying Islamists have got nothing to do with jihadist terrorist attacks. Of course they do. And by the way, I've always taken issue with Muslims who want to downplay the threat of Islamism. But quite clearly, there are groups out there, Patriotic Alternatives, one of them, but there's others, that are absolutely poisonous. They are basically domestic terrorists. They're neo-Nazis. Um, and when they push out their influence, what happens? You get situations like innocent Filipino nurses in my city. I've mentioned this a few times, but it's a good example. Innocent Filipino nurses in my city getting attacked by a mob. Asian families in Middlesbrough being hounded out of their homes. This is what's been happening. So spare me this crap, this lie that there's no far right influence going on. There absolutely is. Shame on GB News for trying to downplay that, and shame on anyone else who tries to downplay it. It's not good enough to say you don't support those groups, but then you're shamelessly going to say, oh, but they don't really exist, they're a small thing. If you're downplaying them, you're not helping the problem. Um, Anyone who wants to come on my channel and support those groups, I'm not going to delete your comments. I'm not going to, or not even support those groups. I don't think you'd be foolish enough to do that directly. But I've seen a number of comments on my channel where people are trying to be evasive and they're trying to find ways to downplay this. Just stop it. I'm not going to delete your comments. I'm not going to censor. But if I reply to them, and I have no obligation to do so, but if I do, I'm not going to hold back on what I think of that. I make no apology for calling the far right what it is, far right. I think, it's interesting the right gets triggered by this. They think, oh, this term's misused. Is it? Is it really? When people are promoting blood and soil nationalism, when they're promoting violence against minorities, when they're threatening to burn down hotels and migrants in them, that's far right extremism. Um, None of this means that the issues that people are concerned about, illegal immigration, hotels, housing migrants, etc., that those issues in of themselves can't be debated. I've never said that. And I think it's dead wrong. I've been accused, for example, in that video, the same person said, oh, well, you should be discussed by mainstream media. Well, guess what? I have criticised the BBC. I criticised the BBC for cutting off the interview with the former police chief. Why did they do that? They need to explain that. So no one can say I'm a lackey for mainstream media, like I've just blindly went along with the BBC all the time. That's just not true. I have often criticised the BBC. I will say this though: what you don't see on BBC threads is an echo tunnel. You don't see the sort of groupthink that you get with GB News. With the BBC, there is more diversity in the opinions. If you look at the comment threads, there's plenty of people criticising the BBC, and there's also people supporting it. So that in itself, to me, says something that overall it's a healthier environment. With GB News, it's groupthink. It's all about patriotism. It's all about, and yes, occasionally they invite on left wing people. I'm aware of that, but I just think GB News is basically Britain's Fox News, and I do think it's the media wing essentially of the Reform Party. Not formally, probably it would be hard to prove any direct links, but they basically act like that. And I'm done with them. And by saying that, I may be blocking any chance I ever have of appearing in that. But they could surprise me and say, "Oh, we'll invite you on as a critic." Fine, let them show that they're open-minded enough to do that. But I stand by that video, and I absolutely call out the far right. It really pisses me off that people cannot bring themselves to condemn racist thuggery. How hard is it to do that? This is not about saying there aren't legitimate concerns. You could be angry about illegal immigration, but be a decent human being and call out someone attacking a minority for no reason. Or maybe they think there's a reason, but you know, just be a decent human being and see that it's wrong. That's all. That's all I'm asking. I'm not even saying agree with me on all the issues. I'm just saying be a decent human being, condemn criminality. If you're going to come to my channel and call rioting criminals and racist thugs just ordinary working class citizens, then I'm going to, if I do respond, it will be, I will push back hard on that. I think it's an insult to the working class, and I think it it does serve to justify what's been happening. Absolutely. That's a disgrace. What if it was your house that was targeted? You know, um, try putting yourself in the shoes of the people that they're targeting. And by the way, I will defend Muslims as well. I've always called out Islamic extremism, but Muslims should have, the freedom, the peace of mind to go to the mosque in peace. Many of them are loyal British citizens. I know that for a fact because I've been in social groups with secular Muslims, with others who work very hard to combat the issue of Islamism. I mean, you get the Quilliam group in Liverpool. What were they doing? They were giving out food to potential rioters. That shows the sort of bridges that they're trying to build and shows what decent people they really are. Yes, there is Islamism in this country, and I think the left is wrong to downplay that. I think also there's too many Muslims that downplay it. But I know many decent Muslims who are loyal British citizens, and they do not deserve this sort of atmosphere of intimidation that they're facing right now. And by the way, I don't think things like putting pork on the door of a mosque is harmless. I think it's disgusting, actually. It's pretty obvious what people are doing with that. So I'm sick and tired of excuses made for the far right and also downplaying the far right. It's true that they haven't so far engaged in a mass terror attack the way Islamists have with multiple casualties, but it doesn't mean that they're not capable of it. Let's not forget one of Europe's worst terrorist attacks was Anders Breivik in 2011. Um, I think that Islamism is toxic. I think that far right ideology is toxic. As for all the patriotism, half these guys are Hitler admirers. Um, I mean, that's the opposite of patriotism. They're traitors, as far as I'm concerned. Don't underestimate either the influence of Russia, Telegram, etc. You know, the Kremlin would absolutely love to see violence on the streets of Britain or France or the Netherlands or other Western countries. So I wouldn't underestimate Russia's influence. I'd like to see Telegram banned if it hasn't been so already. As for Musk, well, what does this tell you? The absolute lack of responsibility that he has. He sees nothing wrong with allowing hate on his platforms. Oh, it's all free speech. I mean, the naivety of that, but I don't think it is naivety because I don't think Musk is stupid. I stand by what I said. I think he revels in chaos. And, he's a smart guy. He knows how, he could talk his way out of anything. But in the end of the day, he is not the one picking up the pieces. So, final words. If you support me, thank you. If you see where I'm coming from, thank you. If you're going to defend the far right, basically FUCKU. That's how I feel about it. Because I take this personally, because there's people close to me that are the very sort of people who would be targeted by these racist thugs. So I take that personally. Um, if you're going to defend them, you're going to look like a fool. So, I'm not going to delete your comments, but if I do respond, I'm not going to hold back either.